In 1519, Hernan Cortez landed on the Yucatan Peninsula. The events that would unfold together became catalysts for global change. The clashing of cultures segued into the exchange of ideas, riches, and unfortunately, fatal disease. The world had been transformed and our future was altered, but this was only attainable because of reasons preceding Cortez's expedition. The year is 1492 and Spain is growing in power and influence. In search of riches, the Spanish monarch King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella decide to fund Columbus's expedition, charging him to seek out a new route to the profitable Indian Ocean trade. It had given them not only a financial outlet, but an inlet to innovative technology such as gunpowder and the compass. Columbus did not find what he sought. Instead, he stumbled on something that would prove to be much, much greater. An entire continent completely untouched by the rest of the world. This discovery brought political discourse between Portugal and Spain, which would be settled by Pope Alexander VI, who created a demarcation line halfway between Hispaniola and the Cape Verde Islands, effectively granting Spain the New World. In return for the land, Spain was given a mission of evangelism. They were to spread Roman Catholicism in their newly claimed lands. Spain's resolution of its political conflict was contrasted by the Aztecs' aggravation of their own. The daily life of the Aztec transplanted into the modern Western world would not be completely out of place. Aztecs placed emphasis on education and gender roles were much alike, with wives as caregivers and husbands as breadwinners. Aztec religion, however, transplanted into the modern Western world would be an ill fit. This would be due above all else to the exorbitant human sacrifice mandated by their gods.
The gods had sacrificed themselves at Teotihuacan, and therefore human beings were now indebted to the gods by owing them this blood, this debt.
In regards to human sacrifice, Hernan Cortez had this to say: "They have another custom, horrible and abominable and deserving punishment, in which we have never before seen in any other place. And it is this, that as often as they have anything to ask of their idols, in order that their petition may be more acceptable." Civilizations surrounding the Aztecs would continue to view sacrifice from victimized perspectives. Aztecs, after conquering other nations, would see some of its citizens and offer them a sacrifice. These citizens were brothers, sisters, fathers, and mothers. The tension between the Aztecs and the conquered people would grow and in time prove to be devastating. Though this created animosity and hatred, it also created a great empire. The Aztecs were a rich and prosperous people. Despite their lack of technology, they were able to construct magnificent cities. They engineered great monuments and sustained themselves with an intensive agricultural system. All in all, they were a force to be reckoned with. Regardless of their strength, the fall of the Mexica seemed almost preordained. Upon his arrival to Mexico, Hernan Cortez met an indigenous woman who would become key to his success. Her name was La Malinche. She was a Nahua, a tribe native to the region, who acted as Cortez's interpreter. She became instrumental in the next phase of Cortez's plan. With her assistance, Hernan Cortez quickly made alliances with the neighboring states of the Aztec, notably the Tlaxcala. These alliances were formed out of animosity held toward the Aztec because the indigenous people of Mexico had been subjugated by them. Cortez then confronted the Aztec ruler who welcomed him into Tenochtitlan with open arms. This would seem odd unless viewed from an Aztec perspective. They believed he was a god. There was a legend in Aztec religion foretelling of a god who would arrive from the east on a mighty beast. The Aztec people were seriously mistaken. Cortez's godlike aura was simply his armor, and his beast was a horse. This was a severe tactical error as it allowed Cortez to survey the battlefield. Though he would not fight there and then, Cortez would later return with 500 conquistadors backed by the militaries of the surrounding states. He had arguably superior technology in the form of gunpowder and steel. That they arrived at the doorstep of the Aztec at a time when tensions with neighboring states were high enough to take advantage of, is nothing short of amazing. Brute force would not have been enough to conquer the great Aztec Empire. The rest of the conquering force was manned by diseases such as smallpox, which were much more deadly than the average soldier.
Now we know that the biggest contributing factor to death or to the so-called conquest was in fact disease.
Disease did more to the native population than steel or gunpowder. With these instruments at his fingertips, he laid siege to the great Aztec Empire. The Spaniards and their allies fought the Aztecs in 1519 and were rewarded with a victory. The Aztecs, however, fought back until they were conquered decisively. 1521 marked the end of the Aztec Empire. There were many motives for Cortez's actions, but the most influential may have been fame. Hernan Cortez had a thirst for glory. He had seen what other explorers had achieved and wished to be ranked amongst them. He sought glory by serving the Spanish throne and colonizing Mexico. The Spanish crown had discovered this new land and wished to give it a purpose. This was Cortez's official objective. In colonizing this new territory, Spain also desired to spread Christianity. By taking this land, they could establish whatever religion they wished as the primary ideology. Though all of these reasons were extremely important motivators, they paled in comparison to the one true motivator: gold. In a time when nationalism was creating competition between the major European nations, wealth was a go-to mark of excellence. Spain desired to transcend greatness and transition into unprecedented opulence. One of the most immediate effects of the Spanish conquest was the violent spread of disease and death. 25% of the Aztec population was estimated to have died, 1 in 4 people. The loss of population meant the loss of culture, leaving room for the major Spanish influences seen in Mexico today. The Spaniards would over time make strides to forcefully assimilate Aztecs into their culture.
We know that the Europeans, wherever they traveled, they implemented a socio-economic system that was largely based on the color of skin.
This hierarchy set a precedent in colonial America in which the lighter an individual's skin was, the higher their social standing. Native Spaniards would arrive soon after the conquest and bring with them a new social system based on parentage and place of birth. Peninsulares, Spaniards born in Spain, were on top, with Creoles, Spaniards born in Mexico, following close after. Beneath the Creoles were the mestizos, people of both Native American and Spanish descent, followed by pure Native Americans. Enslaved people from Africa were at the bottom of the hierarchy. The enormous workload associated with the Spanish silver mines would cause the deaths of many unaccustomed Amerindians. To the Spanish, these deaths were just inefficiencies reducing profit, and would lead them to procure slaves from Africa, directly contributing to slave trade in the Americas. In addition to disease, products were also exchanged between the two worlds. Foodstuffs such as wheat and animals such as horses and pigs made their way west, while corn and potatoes made their way east. Having new reliable food sources, the population of the Afro-Eurasian continents exploded. The fall of the Mexica also led to the spread of the Spanish language.
So in the case of Mexico, Spanish became the language of the state, but obviously these indigenous languages survived and they contributed new words into Spanish.
After the conquest, the Spanish began to drive out Nahuatl, the native language of the Mexica. Driving out the language of the greatest power in the Americas led to the forced diffusion of language. The conquest of the Mexica led to the rampant spread and adaptation of the Spanish language, mostly in Latin America, where Spain gained influence after conquering the Aztecs. Residents of the Chiapas region in Mexico still resist Spanish, protesting it in their native language, Tochtil, one of the few remaining indigenous languages spoken in Mexico. Today, Spanish is spoken as an official language in 20 countries around the world, with a combination of native and non-native speakers exceeding 500 million people. An unlikely effect of the conquest of the Aztec was an enrichment of trade with Asia. The Spaniards found an abundance of silver in the New World.
Silver will be the more important, at least in the case of what is now we're talking about becomes New Spain, right? And what is today known as Mexico. In that case, silver will eventually become much more important than gold.
Conquering the Mexica, its greatest power, opened the doors for Spain to capture its great wealth, which in turn influenced Asia to trade with the European countries. Other European powers followed suit, garnering land, wealth, and power until they were respected by their neighbors to the east, eventually surpassing them and gaining the upper hand. The conquest of the Mexica made an impact on an entirely different continent by shifting a long-established power dynamic. The silver they found would eventually boost the world economy by introducing more resources into the marketplace. Religion was changed drastically for the Aztec. When Spain conquered the Mexica, they gradually inserted Catholicism as the main religion.
And so they brought the Catholic faith very quickly into the, quote, New World. So already by the early 1500s, we have dioceses established, many churches.
Aztec religion was polytheistic and required human sacrifice. It is estimated that 20,000 people were sacrificed annually to keep Aztec gods at bay. After the conquest, the Mexican system of judgment was destroyed. Emperors and priests were replaced with governors and monks. With the support of the Spanish crown and in turn the conquistadors, the Catholic Church was able to spread the word of God. Mexican identity today has been characterized by the religious goals behind the conquest, with 82.7% of Mexicans today being Roman Catholic.
The largest group of Catholics in the world today are Latinos. And so they've been embraced because they're actually now the majority. And so, especially in this hemisphere.
Mexico, as it exists today, is a product of its conquest by the Spanish. Everything from its religion to its language is deeply ingrained with Spanish influences.